How's it going, everyone? It's Ruben Stamper here from Camo Crew Outdoors. So I'm no fortune teller whatsoever, but I'd be willing to guess if you were watching this video, you're exactly where I'm at, which is the rut's over, rifle season is over, and all your buddies, they're just killing great bucks. And 2020 has just been a crappy year. So you're like, I gotta make this year better. You know, I gotta get a buck in the ground. That sounds like you. You're watching the right video. Alright guys, so like I said, 2020, not the best year. And so you really want to get a buck down. I mean, that's how I feel. It's like I want to do something to make this year better. And so I'm going to be employing all the tactics that I know about to get a buck down in the late season. It is completely possible. It's happened to tons of people. I've had opportunities before. I never have actually pulled it off. But I do know the fundamentals of what you need to do to harvest a buck late season. So we're in December right now in Kentucky, and we're past, rifle season. So rifle season obviously makes everything a lot easier. You can take a buck from 150, 200 yards as opposed to having to get up close. But a lot of states have muzzleloader seasons coming up. A lot of states still have, archery in season, and we do here in Kentucky. Crossbow, is in season as well. And so it's totally, sane to go after a buck. You've got tons of opportunities, but it does get a little more tricky. All right, it's not as easy as it was early season because you have new bucks in the area. After the rut, stuff starts to calm down. The bucks stop chasing as much, and they start to kind of centralize in their areas, right? And so how do you incorporate that into your hunting strategy? That's the question you got to ask, and I'm going to do my best to explain to you today how you go about getting a buck in the late season. Okay, so first off, what are you going to do as far as finding the bucks? Okay, where are they going to be? Well, a couple things I want to go over real fast. So first off, food. All right. Obviously, the deer are still going to be feeding. It's winter. They need more food to actually sustain their bodies. And on top of that, they just got done with an intense rut where they were just running everywhere, burning body fat, burning muscle, all that stuff. They're trying to replenish that. And so focus on the food. Figure out on your property or on your neighboring properties where the deer are feeding. Look for sign, okay? That's the best way, in my opinion, to do things is look for footprints, look for scat, look for rubs, scrapes, all that stuff. That's going to tell you kind of where the bucks are moving, okay? All right, secondly, cover. Super important, okay? Hunting season, for the most part, most hunters are out of the woods at this point because it's cold and they're wusses and they don't want to stay out all the time, okay? So there's an opportunity there because a lot of guys won't go out when it's, 20 degrees out, okay, because it's freezing cold out and they don't want to sit in a stand for hours like that. Kind of understandable, but if you're an avid deer hunter, that should not deter you, okay? Get out there and hunt them. And so, but before all these hunters started to leave the woods, they were in the woods. And, rifle season, obviously, tons of shots going around, lots of noise. The woods are disturbed by humans like just crazy. And so the deer are obviously a lot more skittish. They're going to be looking for that cover. They're going to be sticking to that cover. I mean, what I've noticed overall, at least where I hunt in Kentucky, is that even by the last weekend of rifle season, so many of the bucks are not going back out in the open. They're just not going into the fields. They're staying in the dense brush and and the woods, and they're not venturing out too far from those. And so one of the important things to do is to figure out how can I ambush them on their way out from that cover, or how do I draw them out of that cover? Okay, those are basically your two options. And so I'll talk about the first option to begin with. So how do you ambush a buck when he's just leaving that cover, whether he's going to food or just transferring over to a different property, whatever he's doing? How do you figure out where he's going to cross over? Well, the good news is you can basically, a lot of those thicker areas, there's going to be scrapes and rubs all over the place because it was the rut. Bucks are working them, right? First off, one thing to think about: look for newer rubs, okay? Things that have lighter bark that have just been recently scraped. I've talked in previous videos about figuring out whether it's an old rub or a newer rub. Newer rubs, stay on those, okay? Watch those. Figure out basically in those thicker areas where they're going to be bedding down and hiding, taking cover. Figure out where the majority of those scrapes and rubs are, okay? And hunt the outskirts there, right? So if you have a 300-yard swath of nastiness, okay, it's just honeysuckle and it's all garbled together, and basically it's just really thick stuff. Great cover, but super hard to hunt. figure out where the majority of those rubs and scrapes are, and your heavy trails as well, and hunt right outside of that, okay? All right, so the second thing, how do you draw a buck out? Okay, basically, I don't have too many things to say about this because I wouldn't grunt and I wouldn't rattle. And, why is that? Because most of these bucks are just sick and tired of fighting. They have been running and chasing does and fighting bucks for the past, 2 or 3 weeks. They're just exhausted. It's getting colder out. Most of the time, they're not going to come into rattling or grunting. I mean, there are exceptions. I'm sure guys have had, luck doing that. But in my opinion, it's more, the risk doesn't equal the reward, okay? And so I would not rattle or grunt. But what I would do, absolutely, is basically at this point, you're trying to tell the buck that there's an easy doe in the area, right? There's like a doe, it's just like, it's ready to be bred. And so, one of the things I definitely utilize in the late season is mock scrapes. Do them, okay? Like, make sure you're getting a couple mock scrapes in front of your stand, so you're set up next to that cover. Put a mock scrape a little bit out from that in front of your stand, and that can be really helpful. If you have a camera, I recommend putting it on it. Now, a quick word about cameras that I don't normally talk about, but just from experience and from talking to other hunters, this is just so true. Don't rely too much on cameras. You could put out 100 cameras and, for a week you're not seeing any big bucks. You decide, no, I'm not going to go out. And then next thing you know, that exact day, a massive buck walks through, and it's your fault for not getting out there, right? So don't rely on cameras. Rely on other information to get out there. Cameras are just kind of a gauge. You can kind of see what's working your scrape, okay, your mock scrape, and what you're looking at in that regard. But don't let it deter you from getting out there, because you just never know what's going to walk through the woods. Yeah, like I said, as far as getting the bucks out of the cover, mock scrapes I think are a great resource. Even putting doe, putting your doe urine in there, putting a dripper out, putting a wick out, even finding rubs and getting some doe scent next to those. Like, I just recommend getting a lot of scent in that area. If nothing else, it's gonna keep the bucks at least revolving around that area, okay? Because they're still in the breeding mood. You're not gonna get a buck off of the thought of sex, basically. There you go. That's the truth of the matter. And so, the bucks will stay in that area. So take into account weather. I know recently tons of these bucks have been nocturnal, and part of that, like I said, is pressure from hunting season that has happened, just a week or two ago. And part of that also was that we've had super clear nights and a full moon, okay? So those deer have been out at nighttime, because they can see everything perfectly. And so watch the moon. If the moon's starting to get to a point where there's just not much light coming off of it, that next day, probably going to be a good day to hunt, especially if there's any kind of a drop in temperature, okay? So watch the weather. One thing to think about when it comes to the late season is you can get burnout yourself really fast. And so making wise decisions, making those prudent decisions as to when to hunt, it's very important. So watch for a combination of things. Watch the weather, watch the moon cycle, figure out, were the deer going to, moving last night, or they're going to be moving this morning. If they're moving this morning, I should probably get out there. So think about these things, combine them. It's not just one factor that's going to change how deer move. It's going to be a bunch of things. And so be watching those factors. Like I said, especially weather, especially the moon. If you get a big cold front that comes through on top of, maybe it's been 35, but all of a sudden it's going to be, 22 the next morning, maybe you go out that morning, because as brutal as it'll be, there's a good chance the deer will be moving. One thing to think about as far as a personal note for you is make sure you're sticking it out as long as you were back in the rut, okay? Don't do this deal where you hit 8:30 in the morning and you're like, I'm cold, I haven't seen anything yet, probably won't see anything. You start rationalizing in your head. All of a sudden you're like, man, my house seems really nice. My truck seems really nice. Warmth, some food, oh, it'd be great. Get those thoughts out of your head, tough it out. That's how people are successful in the late season. It takes a lot of mental and physical fortitude to get through a late season hunt. But you can do it, and in my opinion, I've killed does in the late season, and it's so much more rewarding when you're able to pull off that shot and get it done. You're like, yes, I had to work a lot harder for this deer, but it was totally worth it. All right, so one thing to think about here in the late season as well is, how do I get into my stand quietly? that can be a big issue. So make sure you're finding the quietest way to get to your stand. If it takes a little bit longer to get there, if you have to leave a little bit earlier in the morning, just so you can take your time getting to your stand so you're not super loud, do it, okay? Because these deer are very skittish. I have hunted late season before when I've had does run in and they've heard a squirrel, 50, 60 yards away, and they just hightail it out of there. It wasn't me that scared them. It was a freaking squirrel. And so, they're very skittish at this point. And so you want to make sure you are doing everything you possibly can to stay quiet, to make sure that your entry into your stand is as quiet as possible and it is disturbing the least amount of things possible. Last thing I want to talk about as far as late season goes, some information that can be very helpful as it comes to locating your animals, locating your bucks. One of the things I do a lot of the times is, I shed hunt. I like to shed hunt. And a lot of people think the shed hunting is, just so you can find the antlers. And that's the best part in my opinion. But there's also a secondary, good that you can take from that. And that is you can figure out where those deer are going to be late season. Especially if you're hunting, late December past that secondary rut when those younger does have come into heat. So, late December, early January, those antlers that you have found, they mark an area that a buck was at some point. He was there. And so if, sometimes what I've done is I will think about, I found this antler here, this antler here, this antler here, this antler here. And I'll kind of make like a mental map of kind of the rough area that I found those antlers. And then I'll think, well, where's the best deer habitat within that area? Okay, because I'll walk hundreds of yards, finding these antlers, and so there'll be huge distances between, and I'll think, okay, well, I found this antler here, this antler here. Here's my mental map. Where in this area is, the best deer habitat I can think about, and then I hunt that, and so that can be very helpful. So keep a mental note. Think about, I found 5 sheds over here. That probably has some significance. So it means the bucks are in that area, and so you should be hunting that, because most bucks act the same. They're going to stay in the same areas, generally. And so think about that when you're thinking about where you're going to hunt. Hey guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I hope this video helped you. I mean, that's kind of what I just do here on this channel. Is I like to help people. I like to show them my hunts. I like to broadcast that I've had a good time out there, and that you can do the same exact thing. But I also like to teach you guys what I've learned, and kind of the composite of what I've read about and all that stuff, because I'm glad when I see people who have had success because of help that I've been able to give them. And so I had a video a couple years back. It was like hunting how to find the deer fast. I think that was the title, and like just so many people commented like, thank you so much, this helped me kill a deer. And that meant a lot to me. So like if this helped you, please like and subscribe. That would be great. But also I would really appreciate it if you just let me know, because I do actually genuinely enjoy helping people get into hunting and get better at hunting, because it is a passion of mine. I love doing it. Like I said, it's a shame that I haven't been able to do it as much as I wanted to recently because I was at college, but I'm here now. I'm going to make the most of it. It's late season. I'm going to try and get a buck down. I'm going to Colorado this year, which I'm super duper excited about, because we're going for, my buddy and I, Jacob Lippert, we're going for cow elk, and it's going to be a blast. I can't wait, and so I'm super blessed to be able to go there. But I did miss out for most of deer season, which is awful, guys. I know that's the way of life, though. You got to make some hard decisions sometimes, and I wanted to go to college, and that's where it found me, not killing deer. But it is what it is. Like I said, I'm here now. I'm gonna make the most of it. If you haven't got a buck down yet, I pray you do the same. Get out there, get after it, kill a buck. Tell me that you killed a buck, because I wanna know that I was able to help you, because it's a great feeling. It's elating. I'm not gonna lie. It's like you hear that you've helped somebody out, and I love that feeling. And so I hope this information helped you. Like I said, please like, subscribe, comment below if you have any success or if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Have a great day. Thanks for watching Camera Outdoors, and I'll see you next time.